Record high temperatures in Australia have sparked bushfires across 3 states in the southeast, burning homes and other buildings to the ground. Firefighters have been battling blazes whipped up by high winds throughout the weekend. On a day of what's been described as catastrophic conditions, a wall of flames tore through more than 8,000 hectares. Emergency warnings were issued in Victoria, where residents in rural areas were advised to evacuate homes and seek shelter as the fires encroached. Away from the countryside, and the authorities have had to transfer scores of homeless people to hospitals for treatment, as temperatures in the city of Sydney reached a scorching 47.8 degrees Celsius. In September 2017, Australians were warned to prepare for a dangerous bushfire season after one of the driest winters on record.
Will this book prove to be the downfall of Donald Trump? Fire and Fury is a no-holds-barred account of life in Trump's White House. Author Michael Wolff was given wide-ranging access during much of Trump's first year. He told NBC's Meet the Press his revelations are likely to bring an end to Trump's tenure.
It's an extraordinary moment in time, and the last several days focused on my book, I think, are proof of this. This is what happened here. What's going on here? This is, I think, not an exaggeration and not unreasonable. It's not unreasonable to say this is 25th Amendment kind of stuff.
Trump has dismissed the book as full of lies. It depicts a chaotic White House and a president who was ill-prepared to win office in 2016. Trump aides, it's claimed, scorned his abilities.
Trade agreement, which isn't modelled on somebody else.
Speaking on Sunday, UK Prime Minister Theresa May defended Donald Trump when asked if he was mentally unfit for office.
The United States on a number of issues. President Trump, I think, when I deal with President Trump, what I see is somebody who is committed to ensuring that he is taking decisions in the best interests of the United States.
And he's coming to this country?
He will be coming to this country.
There are increasing concerns that a burning oil tanker off the east coast of China could explode, with potentially catastrophic environmental consequences. The 32 crew members of the Iranian vessel Sanchi are still missing after the tanker collided with a Chinese grain ship on Saturday evening. The crew of the Chinese ship were rescued. The tanker is carrying 136,000 tons of condensate, an ultra-light version of crude oil, but more toxic and highly explosive. If all the cargo leaks, the spill, equivalent to around 1 million barrels, would be the biggest in over 25 years.
Preliminary talks have resumed in Germany in what some are labelling a last-ditch effort to form a stable coalition government. Angela Merkel, the Chancellor for the past 12 years, has so far failed to convince other parties to form an alliance. Her CDU and its sister party, the CSU, are currently courting the SPD at its Berlin headquarters. It's proven a reluctant ally. After years of being the minority partner, the centre-left Social Democrats suffered their worst results since World War II in September's vote. On election night, its leader vowed to take the party into the opposition, but it could now be changing its tune. At the start of this round of talks, General Secretary Lars Klingbeil said new times need a new style of politics. If talks go well, the SPD will ask its members to vote on moving forward with coalition negotiations. If no deal is struck, a new election could be on the horizon.
Emmanuel Macron visits China's Terracotta Army. The French president is in Xi'an, the departure point for the original Silk Route. The location is symbolic. France wants to support China's Belt and Road Initiative, the modern-day version of the ancient trading link. But Macron is also facing a modern-day battle, that of climate change. We need to measure how far we've come, he says. Who'd have thought it a few years ago that China would have a leading role in this? Nonetheless, you've done it. Your insight and ability to adapt and transform is obvious.
Pourtant, vous l'avez fait.
et démontrée. Et c'est ainsi
I plan to offer to cross a new threshold in the Franco-Chinese partnership with President Xi to relaunch the fight against climate change. Losing is not an option. We have no choice in order to save our planet.
Pour relancer la bataille climatique. Il n'y a pas d'autre option, en effet, que la gagner. Parce qu'il n'y a pas d'autre option pour notre planète.
Macron is hoping to help relaunch EU-China relations. Ties are often strained by Beijing's restrictions on foreign investment and trade. The French president, who's travelling with a delegation of 50 businessmen, is hoping to gain more access for French companies to Chinese markets.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu stopped short of backing an immediate halt of US aid to Palestinians, while he reiterated his call for the dismantling of a UN agency created to help Palestinian refugees. Netanyahu's public comments at a weekly cabinet meeting appeared to reflect a desire to show support for a main ally, US President Donald Trump, as well as concern that choking off funds would deepen Palestinian hardship and put Israel and militants on a course for war. I completely agree with President Trump's harsh criticism of the United Nations Relief and Work Agency. UNRWA is an organization that perpetuates the Palestinian refugee problem. It also enshrines the narrative of the so-called right of return in a bid to eliminate the State of Israel. Therefore, UNRWA should pass from the world. The Axios News website reported that Washington had frozen $125 million in funding for the UNRWA. A report denied by a State Department official. The UN agency was founded in 1949 to aid Palestinian refugees and is still a main provider of education and health services in the Gaza Strip. The US are the biggest contributor, with $360 million going to the agency in 2016 to help over 5 million refugees.
Trade agreement.
Theresa May says she intends to remain Britain's Prime Minister as long as people want her, and that she will be reshuffling her cabinet soon.
Well, it's no prizes for guessing, Andrew, that obviously Damien Green's departure before Christmas means that some changes do have to be made, and I will be making some changes.
May ousted her deputy Damien Green for lying about pornography found on his office computer. His successor will have to try to maintain unity in a cabinet deeply divided over Brexit. There has been speculation May could move Foreign Secretary Boris Johnson to a bigger role that could marginalise Brexit Secretary David Davis. But several newspapers now report that Davis, Johnson, Chancellor Philip Hammond and Home Secretary Amber Rudd, 4 of May's most senior ministers, will remain in post. Education Secretary Justine Greening is being tipped as the most prominent casualty in the reshuffle, which is expected on Monday. The Sunday Times says the changes will aim to bring younger women and more diversity into the cabinet, to dust off the Tory image as pale, male and stale.
Syria's army has broken the siege of a military base which had been encircled by opposition forces on the eastern outskirts of Damascus. Army elite troops, backed by Russian jets, launched an offensive after last Sunday rebels widened their control in the eastern Ghouta town of Harasta. Around 200 government personnel were believed to have been trapped in the base. Rebel forces had stormed it last week in a bid to relieve pressure on eastern Ghouta's towns. Until then, it had been used by government troops to strike at densely populated rebel-held areas.
In de momento para outro espaço comercial, agora o nosso back e deporte.